Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you for another Film Fanatic show. It is 11:23 on a Monday morning. So hope everyone's doing good. We had another strange and chaotic weather pattern move through Maine. Here we had another crazy situation of power outages and flooding and just kind of a catastrophic start to the day yesterday in the morning. Just crazy freaking weather. But anyway, so today is a show on my review of Dune 2. I've been really, I don't know, chomping at the bit to talk about this movie. My anticipation to see Dune 2 was kind of through the roof. I did a show just a few days ago where I talked about all things Dune, the Dune universe, and what have you. And so check that out. It is, I don't know, it's pretty in depth. I talk about Frank Herbert's book, which is my favorite science fiction book, which came out in '65. I talk about the David Lynch movie. I talk about the sci fi original television show. And of course, Denis Villeneuve's first movie, which came out about 2 years ago. And so I was super excited to see this film. I really think at the end of the day, up until this point, that Denis Villeneuve's version of Dune is the definitive version. I went with a group of friends the other night. We went to Flagship Cinema. I saw it on Saturday night at Flagship Cinema, and I have to say before I dive into this whole show, it truly was a remarkable experience. I think it was one of the best film going experiences I've had in recent time. It might be just one of the best experiences I've had as far as going to a movie. I'm a big proponent of, going to the movies, having that experience, going to that dark room, whether you're in a room with strangers or friends or by yourself, if you're in a nice theater that has a good sound system, it's the ultimate way to experience the craft of filmmaking. It's all about immersion. It's all about escapism. And then also, I'm obviously a big physical media guy. I get that same experience when I see a really fantastic film on a really great Blu-ray edition. I can still have that experience on DVD, but Blu-rays I feel are it's the best format. And I even have had experiences where, depending on the edition of the film, and depending on maybe what theater I had gone to, sometimes the home experience in that context is even better. But for the most part, nothing beats going to the theater and having that real expansive kind of journey into escaping for a few hours. It's the greatest thing. And my feelings for Dune 2, because it was so anticipated, it's my favorite story. It's it's my favorite science fiction story novel. Denis Villeneuve for me is one of the greatest directors. I've been following his career for a very long time. I own all of his films on Blu-ray, and so I just thought that this movie was next level. I feel like Denis Villeneuve is a director that he sets such a gold standard. I think with all of his films, and his track record for the films that he's created is just beyond anything really. As far as just high level films, I mean, you have films like Sicario, The Arrival, Enemy, Prisoners, Blade Runner 2049. I mean, every one of those titles is just incredible. Just incredible. I think he has such a unique voice because he can back and forth between multiple genres. Probably my favorite in all of those films. The first movie I ever that where I discovered him as a filmmaker was Prisoners with Hugh Jackman, which is just such a an intense movie and just an amazing film. I've probably seen that movie the most, but that was the first movie where how I discovered Denis Villeneuve as a director. But probably, and again, it's hard to pick. It's super hard to pick because I think they're all consistent and they're all just kind of masterpieces. Probably my favorite film of his is Sicario. I when I went to the to the movies the other night with some friends to see Dune 2, we were talking about Denis Villeneuve, and some of my friends had not really seen any of his other films. In particular, Sicario, and I was like, you gotta see Sicario. I mean, it's a so I think that that movie is probably my favorite. And again, it's completely different than a lot of his other films because it deals with the CIA and the drug trade and the dark underbelly of what goes on behind closed doors, and particularly our the CIA's relationship with the Mexican drug cartels. But just an amazing film. But at the end of the day, I feel like Dune, his version that came out in 2 years ago, is the best version of my favorite science fiction story ever. I think it's a masterpiece. I did not get a chance to see it in the theater. I was super bummed. I saw it on DVD. I remember it came out pretty quick on DVD. I saw it on DVD, and then I shortly after that I was somewhere in my on my travels, and I came across a Blu-ray version of it, and I snatched it up, and I've watched it probably 3 or 4 times since then. I actually just watched it again, the first part, Dune, about 2 days ago in preparation to watch Dune 2. I wanted everything to kind of be fresh. The original novel, I it's a book that I've read multiple times, and I kind of revisit it every 2 or 3 years. I start reading it. I read it again, and there's so much there. The story is so rich that I feel like it's one of those stories that you can get something new out of it each time. So but I honestly think what Denis Villeneuve has done, and again, it's my favorite novel of all time, but I honestly think what Denis Villeneuve has done with these two movies, especially part two, I almost prefer. Not only are these films the definitive versions, the best versions as far as the book adaptation, I almost now I have to say I almost prefer these movies more than the book, just because it just again it perfectly handles the source material in every way, but it also just gives you it's got a little more focus into the story, and it's more direct, more at the heart, more at the essence of the story, and to a degree a little bit less dense. And I just think that is completely attributed to Denis Villeneuve as a filmmaker and his vision, because he is a master filmmaker. This is something I've always felt, but I think that this, without a doubt, solidifies this arrival of Denis Villeneuve, where I now would put him in the class. I've always felt this way, but I think he is part of that top echelon of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Directors, I put his name right up there with like Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, Akira Kurosawa, Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, so many brilliant directors. And now I think he is part of that, you know, exclusive club, if you will. Like, he is one of the most important directors ever. And he is I think he's a film treasure because he's still young. He is very prolific, and he's got a long, long career ahead of him. And this film just really, I think, just ushers that in to its completion. The thing that I was so taken, the biggest thing I was taken that had taken me back by watching Dune 2 was obviously Dune 2, and this is the second part of the book. It is about Paul Atreides. Now his character has become fully awakened. He is now leading this revolution, and the film, of course, has so much intrigue, has the it's a study about the like kind of the power dynamics of empire. It has a lot of, and it holds a mirror up to kind of our society, global politics, domestic politics, the hunger for power and what people will do in regards to gaining that power. And I feel I mean, so many things, but the thing that I was just so taken aback by, but visually for this film, seeing this on the big screen, simply was just jaw dropping. I'm not a huge fan of CGI. I've talked about that a lot. There's there are some really great examples of where CGI can be, really done very well. Films like the Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, last Spider-Man movie. I also feel the first three Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films are examples of that, where you have practical effects and CGI, and it's pretty seamless. Dune 2 has much of a huge incorporation of CGI, but a lot of the stuff is actually way more practical than you would think. But I think obviously there was a lot of CGI required for this film because of the scope. This movie is much more of a war film, and I have to say I could not believe how seamless the use of technology and practical or real life effects. I couldn't believe how seamless it was. It's completely jaw dropping. It's from a technical standpoint, just alone, it's like pure perfection. Like it's unbelievable. It's one of the most immersive films I've ever seen. I can only imagine seeing this movie, like say in IMAX. Like holy shit! Like I couldn't even fathom how intense that would be. We saw it at Flagship in Rockland, and we went to. It was showing in one of the smaller theaters, but this past year or two they redid the theater, and the theaters are really nice in there now. They have, the seating, they have the reclining seats, the heated seats. They redid. They put a lot of money into getting better screens and sound systems, so the sound is really good in there. I mean, they've really stepped it up, and so it was really good quality. So it was, but again, I can only imagine seeing an IMAX. The closest IMAX for us or for me here is in Saco, and it's like a 2 hour drive, and it's a little bit more. If you're gonna get a group of people to go to a movie that's 2 hours away, and all those things that entails, that is a lot more. That takes a lot more time to logistically organize something like that. But I think it obviously would have been worth it, but we just couldn't do it. So, but this was pure magic, pure magic. It was, one of the greatest films I've seen in recent time. I think it's up there for me now as some of the best experiences I've ever had going to the movies. I do think that this film is, again, Dune is so damn good. It's such a masterpiece. I do think that this film is actually better than the first one. It's got a interesting introduction of humor. There's some funny moments to this film. It's not obviously it's very serious, but it has a little bit of levity with there's some comedic elements. It really dives into the human qualities even more. There's a more of an emotional thing even more with a lot of these characters. And um, yeah, I think it was the very definition as to why I feel films are the greatest form of artistic expression, and why I just feel, going to the movies is, one of the most exciting experiences a person can have. And I think culturally it's one of the most important things. I think it is, you look at it just as like, say, an entertainment. From an entertainment aspect, you have that, but I also feel it's part of our DNA. We're social creatures. We interact that way. That's how we share ideas and share our passions. And this movie, this experience, is the definitive version as to why I feel that is. You know, I've been a huge Denis Villeneuve fan for a long time. I've been following his career. You have some films like Sicario, which is probably my favorite film of his, and again, it's very, very hard to pick. The Arrival. I mean, geez, what else can you say about that movie? My first film of his that I saw was Prisoners with Hugh Jackman. I was completely blown away. After I saw that movie, I immediately was like, okay, who is this director? I need to know what other films he has directed. It was really funny because when I saw Prisoners, it was one of those movies that had come out on DVD. I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it at the video store. I saw it at Opera House Video on the shelves, and I just would like pass on it. I thought it looked okay. I kind of felt it was going to be like, run of the mill standard kind of thriller film, but okay. And then finally, I actually, bit the bullet, and I rented it, and I was just like, holy shit! I was just completely enamored with this film. And then after that, I became a huge fan. And the last, 5 years or less, I have bought all of his movies on Blu-ray. All of his films, I think they're, as far as my collection, the movies that stand out as far as like, the best, I think his movies are, that, and particularly the ones I own, are, some of the best home theater experiences. Blade Runner 2049, another one that's just phenomenal. The only other the films of his that I saw in the theater, I remember I saw The Arrival in the theater, and then I saw Blade Runner 2049. Um, I think that's it, up until Dune 2. And I'm not one to like read into hype around certain films, but, for good or bad, when a film comes out and if it's got a lot of a lot of buzz around it, say, and maybe say, for example, if it's like a film that across the board people are talking about left and right, they're talking to their friends or they're posting things on social media about it or what have you, saying that it's the best movie ever or the most just such an incredible movie, or they're saying that this movie, or they're saying a movie is complete and utter trash. Obviously, that's a big thing nowadays. In when films come out, for good or bad, everybody and their grandmother is a critic, and that's fine for good or bad. It's subjective if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And then but I think it's relatively safe to say, and it's a pretty good indicator. I think if a movie's going to be good or bad. I think there are some examples of where it was way off, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But like, you know, say for instance, a movie, say, well, like Halloween Ends, the last David Allen Green film in the Halloween franchise, which ironically is probably my favorite in that franchise. I really actually really like that movie quite a bit. And that movie, I bought it on Blu-ray. It's the only David Allen Green movie that I actually really like. I'm not a big fan of the other ones for various reasons. They're kind of well, I think they're I don't know, poorly executed, and they don't really follow through. Those films offer some real interesting ideas, but there's not really any a real follow up through with executing those ideas. Things that can kind of be unconventional. There's hints of that, but they don't go there. But I felt like with Halloween Ends, he for the most part did take those chances, and I think the franchise needed that. And but that movie across the board was just decimated by the public and decimated by critics, and it bombed. And it died a horrible death. I think since the movie has been out for a while now, it's now kind of garnering an audience. It follows the same trajectory as Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which exactly follow the same exact path. Other films where I feel like that are really embraced, but I feel like they're not very good. One movie I would say are well is movies in the new there's the new franchise, the Terrifier franchise, the first Terrifier, which came out a few years ago about Art the Clown, the murderous clown, and then there's the Terrifier 2 that came out, and then also there's a third one coming out. Those films were very much a independent uh, film, but they were box office phenomenons. But across total phenomenons, but across the board, critics and people like were just praising that movie to death, and saying how just this is this Terrifier in particular is like the new model of the primetime slasher film. Like this is a masterpiece. If you love horror, you love gore. This film and these other films are just the greatest things. You know those both films were just so critically acclaimed, and I actually don't. I should say I've only seen the first one, and I feel like those movies are super. They are overly hyped. They're not very good. Aside from the incredible gore, I think those films are pretty overly hyped, and so that's an example of the other kind of spectrum of things. And I think another example would be, say, Avatar, the Avatar movies. I saw the Way of Water in the theater. It was a really great technical movie going experience. I was glad to see it. I think it is better than the first one. But again, that movie was embraced by many people, many critics across the board. But I also feel that it really lacks any real originality, and for some reason, the care and the love is not put into the writing, as opposed to all of the digital breakthroughs that James Cameron's made with that movie. I have a lot of issues with that movie. I think it's better than the first one. So, getting back to Dune 2 specifically, it's been embraced by. I've heard so many people, leading up to me going to see this movie. I heard so many people saying how just what a masterpiece this movie is. So many critics coming out and giving this movie just the highest accolades you can imagine. So when things when things are overly over the to the point of where it can be a little ridiculous, but for the most part, when you have a consensus of a film that's coming out, you can kind of get a sense of what that movie is going to be, and for the most part, it's probably going to be right or spot on, especially if it's universally praised or universally you know given that thumbs down. But again, the examples I just talked about, you know, you have to make up your own mind, and it wasn't that for me. So, but Dune 2 was very much embraced by everyone. Just an incredible amount of praise. And so I thought, okay, going into this movie, I love Denis Villeneuve. This movie is probably going to be good. But part of me was very cautious. Part of me was like, well, you never know. It could be a departure. It could be a letdown, or for various reasons. You never know, or it could be just maybe not as good. It might not have that level of consistency. But going to see it, I think overall I think it's better than the first one. As great as the first one is, what the thing I really want to do is buy Dune 2 on Blu-ray and watch both of them back to back, because it's so seamless on how both movies connect. Um, the second part literally starts right as the first one ends, and I thought that is just amazing. You're strapped in, ready to go right away, and I just thought that was just great. The story is just so cohesive. The acting, Timothy Chalamet is just absolutely incredible in this film as his rise as Paul Atreides. Um, Astounding. The cast for this film is just incredible. There's moments where Paul Atreides' character, played by Timothy Chalamet, I almost could not recognize him, and the extreme and wondrous arc of his character in the story, where you see him emerge as the warrior, this Messiah, this prophet, and there are scenes of where he gives these speeches where I did not even recognize him. I mean, it was a total transformation in every way, shape, and form. Just miraculous. I haven't seen that kind of a powerful performance in a film in a very long time. Austin Butler, oh my God, just amazing. He plays Federutha Harkonnen, who is the nephew to the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. And it's funny because Fayed Uther Harkonnen was played by Sting in the original film, and I was talking to a friend about that. It's like, oh, that's Sting played that role in the original, the David Lynch version, and it's great. But Austin Butler in this role, he is literally the epitome of evil. I mean, and he's so brutal and so badass. I mean, he was probably my favorite thing of the movie. His whole design is just amazing. The whole design of his character was just amazing, and he is so ruthless and the epitome of evil. Just when you see him on in a scene or see him on screen, it is frightening. And he's my favorite part of the movie. He is just amazing. I'd say Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides also. The cast across the board. Florence Pugh, incredible. She's just incredible in this film. Zendaya is just amazing. She is a main character now in this, or at least in the second part, just like the books. Um, Leia Sado is incredible, and of course Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Amazing, amazing, and of course he is much more of he's much more of a central character. This is the first film Christopher Walken makes the debut as the Emperor, and he is just amazing. I have not seen Christopher Walken in a film in a long time, and Javier Bardem, Christopher Walken's amazing in it. Javier Bardem is just amazing. Josh Brolin, um, the the characters, the characterization, the actors, the cast. I feel like they there's even more humanity to their characters. There's even a kind of a cool sense of humor in this movie, which I thought is good because the movie. I mean, Dune is very psychedelic and it's very serious. It's heavy, it's dense, and they used a little bit of humor in this movie that I thought kind of lightened it up, gave it a little bit of levity, which was perfect. Perfect. Gave just enough of that. But the characters, the casting, the dialogue is through the roof. Through the roof. It was pure. Dune 2 is is an example of pure cinematic perfection. I think the movie is kind of perfect. I think it's just an amazing movie. And I think honestly all the hype, and not hype, hype can be a negative, can have a negative connotation, but I should say all of the praise that this movie has gotten is is completely justified in every way, shape, and form. Shape and form. And if anything, it could be there could be even more of that. I mean, because this movie is like one of the most epic movies I've ever seen. Visually, top to bottom, you have just brilliant, brilliant direction by Denis Villeneuve. The cinematography is just jaw dropping. The cast is just incredible. They shine even more in this movie. The writing is even better. The writing is at a higher level. Hans Zimmer's score, again, I think it's the greatest music that he's ever composed in his life. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching a couple of YouTube guys, and they were talking about this film, and they're huge Dune film fans, and also they're very big fans of Denis Villeneuve. And they have one of the guys in particular was talking about how he's seen Dune 2 at least 2 or 3 times already in the theater, which is crazy because it is long. It's close to 3 hours, but I have to say this movie did not drag at all. I had not slept so well that day on Saturday, and we went out for a big meal before the movie, and the movie started at 9:10. By the time the movie started, it was about 9:20, 9:30. And so I was a little bit worried that I was gonna like get super tired and fatigued and like take a nap, but I never did. It woke me up. It woke me up. It was like having that splash of cold water in your face, or like having that nice strong cup of coffee. Like it woke me up, and I was totally into it, captivated. After we saw it, we were just talking about it constantly. But I think getting back to actual the details around the film, where I left off with Hans Zimmer, I think this is his greatest, greatest composition. I think this film, I might have mentioned it before, but it's worth talking about again. I've always felt this way, but I think this movie really solidifies Denis Villeneuve as a true master filmmaker. Again, I've always felt that way from all of his films. Sicario probably being my favorite. I own all of his films on Blu-ray, but I think this film officially should usher Denis Villeneuve where he has arrived. He is amongst the top directors, in the world. I think Denis Villeneuve is right up there now with Akira Kurosawa, Martin Scorsese, Stanley Kubrick. I mean, he is of that. He should occupy that same space, and this movie, I think, ushers that in. You know, in hindsight, I almost feel like when you look at all of those aspects of what a film is and what makes a film good or for good or bad, or what can make the film not so great or successful. When you have a good film, where you have so many aspects, talked about it a lot. When I had director Asif Akbar, which was a great show. He's a director. The interview was all centered on kind of the. I wanted that show to be centered on the film, the director's perspective. What it's like to direct a movie, whether you have a little money, a small budget, or you have a really big budget, and what's it like to, especially in this day and age. What do you do as far as how do you navigate the streaming and getting your film distributed and all of those things. And I wanted the whole interview to be mostly focused on that kind of perspective and hearing a different voice. And so, one of the things I had said in that interview that we talked about, like, I think filmmaking is the greatest form of art that there is, and I think it's the most complex art that there is. It's the hardest thing. And so, what Denis Villeneuve has done, I think, when you think of the cinematography, the actual direction, the the writing, and the use of a script, the casting, the the editing. I mean, just so many things, all happening at once. CGI, practical effects, big action sequences, all of those things. I think overall this movie is takes all those things and just catapults it into the stratosphere where it's now. I think it's a masterpiece. I really can't wait to see it. Next time I see it though, I really want to buy it on Blu-ray and watch both films together. I watched the Denis Villeneuve version of it of Dune, which came out 2 years ago. I watched it 2 days ago, or right up until I saw Dune 2. I wanted it to be kind of fresh in my memory, so which I was glad to do. And yeah, it's a remarkable film, and I can't recommend it enough. Really excited that this movie has made so much money in the box office. I believe that this film has made, within the first few days, it made twice the amount of money that Dune made. And I just think that that is amazing and completely justified. And this will, I believe he's going to direct the next book, which was the Dune Messiah. And I think he's going, from what I've read and from what I heard, Denis Villeneuve his intention was to direct the third movie, and maybe conclude there, but we'll see. But I think he, you know, this solidifies and makes that possible. So I can't recommend it enough. It's probably going to be in the theaters for quite a while, but nothing out there will touch this movie. So I highly recommend to anybody out there checking out this show or whatever, go see Dune. It's a truly a remarkable cinematic experience. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.